My name is Marjolein Schuit, and I am a permaculture consultant. I teach classes all around the world, so mainly it is Europe, Canada, and the US. I also visit properties from 3 acres and up. And what I do in my work is actually restore balance in the ecosystem. I always start with soil restoration, and I make sure that the soil conditions are correct so that it is beneficial not only to humans, but also to animals and plant life and phenomena such as rain and sun and water and all these kind of things. And in today's class, I'm going to talk a little bit about biodiversity. I will keep this really, really short. So if you want to know more about my work, just send me a personal message. If you want to have a free audit of your property, I only momentarily work with properties of 3 acres and up. And that is because my waiting list for smaller properties is now full. So there's now a waiting list for smaller properties. But if you want to work with me and you have 3 acres or up, you can do so by just contacting me, sending me a personal message. And then I provide you a free audit of your property. And then I will give you some tips and tricks on how to restore balance in your ecosystem. And I'm going to tell you how to work together with me. So I work with projects that I'm involved in as a project manager for 3 years. And I do that long period, that stretch period of time, because it takes about those first 3 years are the most hectic for soil restoration. And I just want to make sure that I'm always there for you. I'm just available so that it won't be a wacky ride as that you do it yourself. It's always better to have a consultant for when you have a property of 3 acres and up. So that is my job. And in a nutshell, there's way more to it. And you will see how complex it can get when we talk about biodiversity. So I have my notes in front of me. If I don't directly look at you, it is because I'm also peeking at my notes. And my notes are so simple because I just want to talk about this topic from the heart. But I want to make sure that we all understand what I mean and what you might mean when we talk about biodiversity. So biodiversity boosts ecosystems productivity when there are multiple species, no matter how small or how big, all play an important role. So for example, we need a large number of plant varieties and plant species that give us a great variety of crops, for example. So if we talk about regenerative agriculture, the more crop variety we have on our acres, the better it is for our ecosystem. So greater species diversity ensures natural sustainability for all life forms. But what do I see that's missing in my job? Because I always look at the ecosystem as a whole, and not just one singular part in that ecosystem. I think this is silo thinking. It is a false way of thinking, just to think of your own specialty within that realm without considering all the rest that's involved actually in restoration and balancing of ecosystems. So what is missing for me is that we see the world mostly as human-centered. We think that we are the center of the universe, that we are the most important in the world as the human species. We think that everything that we do in life should benefit us as humans. And therefore, we make decisions that are based on that, and they're quite one-sided. So we decide, for example, I want to grow food for how many people are there in the world? 8 billion, I think, 8 billion people. But that's just for that species, human as a species. And therefore, we decided that it's better just to grow 4 varieties of main crops, so potatoes and corn and rice, for example, and grains, because then we think that we could feed more people. But we cut, because we think as humans, as a center, we cut a whole lot of corners. So in doing so, after the Second World War, we as human, as species, that's why I say we, because I'm part of, I'm still human. We decided that it would be very beneficial to wipe out anything that attacked our crops. So pesticides, for example, fungi, any type of critters, any diseases. We decided it would be very, very good if we want to keep those main crops. It would be very good to wipe out everything that's attacking it. But it was actually, I'm sorry, it is actually feedback from the ecosystem. The ecosystem is telling that those crop landscapes, which mainly consist of one crop and not even a variety of that crop, it's just one crop. So it is a grain and then one type of grain, for example. And the ecosystem is telling, wait a minute, there is nothing else for us to get. So we have to do whatever we can to signal, like, hey, there's something missing in this ecosystem. And whenever a disease or a pest attack a crop field that is monoculture, meaning just one crop, it then wipes out the whole crop field because there's nothing else for that pest or disease to diversify on. So it automatically kills whatever crop there is available. And by using biocides, so any type of chemical, we actually keep on destroying the defense mechanisms of plants. And plants need other varieties of plants to not only diversify in foods and uptake of nutrients and minerals, but they also need diversification to hone off pests. And plants have the capacity to, whenever they're not sprayed, they have the capacity to cover themselves in a repellent for pests and diseases. A very fun example of this is if the soil balance isn't correct, it is actually so that snails come to the alcohol process. It is a it is an alcohol fermentation process within the plant, and the plant plant actually connects with fungi and bacteria, and that whole mini ecosystem actually makes sure that a plant is healthy. But when the soil balance is off, the plant cannot really uptake the nutrients that it needs, and then it starts fermenting. And the fermenting process is actually what attracts snails. Now imagine snails love Brassicaceae, so that is all kinds of cabbage varieties. They just adore it. What if a farmer decides to just grow one certain crop in his fields? It's a red cabbage because it's very popular and we need to feed the world, so we just pick red cabbages because they're the most stable and they're most pest resistant. For example, I'm just naming something as an example. I don't know if this is true because there's not many cabbages grown anymore. So that farmer decides, okay, I'm only gonna grow red cabbages. They give me the most money for my crop. They are they do quite well with chemical fertilizers, and they're quite stable. The crops are big and heavy, so best bang for my buck, that farmer thinks. And it's also the demand of the customer, of course, that plays a role. But by doing so, and choosing the chemical route, so biocides, to wipe out pests, it not only wipes out the pest that the farmer hates so much. So, for example, a whitefly is very attracted to cabbages. And what if the farmer wants to wipe out all whiteflies just to prevent, to do pest control? not only does it wipe out that white fly, but it also wipes out all beneficial other critters and animals, and it wipes out the fungi networks that are needed. So what if there is mildew, for example, and the farmer decides, let's just spray everything as a prevention to not get mildew and the white fly, but it also then kills off any beneficial network within that ecosystem. Um, and the one type of cabbage needs a particular nutrient, but all the other nutrients are then not cycled because we need other type of plants to do so. Here it gets very complicated, and I want to make sure that I keep it very short. But in total, because we humans see ourselves as the center of this ecosystem, we think only in terms of, okay, how many crops do I need to grow to feed the world? How much money do I make from that? I might as well just kill off whatever prevention, whatever will attack my cabbages, just to be sure. But we forget that whether that's agriculture, whether it's our garden, whether it's our balcony, whether these are parks or forests, these are all holistically functioning ecosystems. We actually need diversity of crops, diversity of beneficial critters. We need the diversity within predator-prey relationships. And if we only think of the human as the center, we forget that everything else functions within a whole. So it's a holistic system. And that diversity is then needed for us humans to be healthy. So what if we only eat red cabbages? I don't know what the nutrient intakes of red cabbages are. I'm not a nutritionist, but that's very a one-sided diet. But we know this as humans. The more diversity is on our plate, Dr. Vandana Shiva tells us so. Dr. Vandana Shiva is one of my mentors. She's a regenerative agriculture expert. She's the best in the world in this field. And she tells us that the more diversity is on your plate, the more healthy we are as humans. Think of a bottle of vitamins, for example. A bottle of vitamins consists of all type of vitamins and minerals within one single pill. But we know that we all need these kind of vitamins, right? But these vitamins are actually normally in our food, and we can uptake these vitamins if our platter is already diversified. So it's not only red cabbages, it's also potatoes, and it's another type of cabbage, it's some salad, and maybe corn, maybe meat if you're a meat eater, and maybe some carrots and some grains and millet, and maybe some rice as well. So then you have way more diversity on your plate. And now we only have plates that consist of meat, for example. I'm just naming an example. Meat, maybe potatoes, and one veg, for example. That is not a healthy diet. And we know this as humans. We know it's not good for our gut health. We get more chronic diseases of the way we eat. And it also comes from biocides, the use of chemicals in agriculture. So we know this. The more diversity on our plate, the better we are off as humans. But why don't we think of then that biodiversity is then needed as well in the outdoor world, just to name something, in the wildlife? We need, from all species that are there, we need a multiple variety of things. So not only one type of grain, we need, I think there are like 300 grains, if I'm correct. For example, there are maybe 300 varieties of rice. There are 70 types of potatoes, and name it. If you look into a seed catalog, you see like a heirloom seed catalog. You see how much biodiversity, how much variety there actually is within crops. It's not just the Pomodoro tomato. It is so much else. Um, and I think because we see humans as the center of the universe, we shortcut so much within biodiversity and our ecosystem that it's actually harmful for us, not only for us as humans, but harmful for our planet and the whole system. So I think, why should we care about this? We should care about this if you're altruistic, so you only think of you as the center of the universe. Think of it as just a multivitamin that is way better for you than something that comes from a bottle. You could think of it that way, but also think of it if you're more like concerned about climate change and global warming and all these things. Think of it as, okay, if we restore all these species within our ecosystems and we think of us humans as part of the ecosystem instead of on top of it, or however you want to call it, we then see that everything has a symbiosis together, so an interrelationship between multiple species. And that is needed to have balance within the world. And if we really want to think about climate crisis, I like to call it, not climate change, that has a different reason, we need to make sure that we have as much diversity in the world as possible. And we really need to honor the total ecosystem. Um, so I'm going to give you 3 items that you can already integrate in your garden. I really want you to, first of all, observe more in your gardens. That is tip number 1. It is the most, people find it the most boring and the most, if I always say that, they say like, yeah, but Marjolein, that's so logical. But it's the hardest skill to have as a gardener or a landscape owner, or maybe you are an urban designer. Start with observation. See what kind of symbiosis are already forming in your garden. What kind of interrelationships between species are already there. And when observing your garden, you might see that from that one type of shrub, you only have that one type growing. And that is actually the second tip. Wherever you have one type of strawberry growing, for example, why don't you integrate 4 more varieties to have more biodiversity? It makes up for a more stable ecosystem. So tip number 2 is integrate more variety in your own garden or your balcony. I don't really care what kind of landscape you have. Integrate more variety. A park is, for example, is a bad example of this. In parks, they only plant one type of tree and one type of shrub, for example. Maybe another one, but that's about it. We need way more variety. Also in our grass landscapes, and it's everywhere. We need so much more biodiversity. And then I really want you from now on, tip number 3 is whenever you make a decision, not make it only for yourself as a human, but make it for the total of the ecosystem and the impact that it has on thinking about climate change. So whenever you make a decision, whenever you go to the supermarket, or you want to order something online, or you have conversations, whatever you do, if you apply for something or when you buy clothing, always think of, okay, but how does this impact the ecosystem as a whole? Just think about it. You don't have to have all the answers, but I just want you to be conscious about it. I want you to notice what our thinking as humans have as an impact on the whole of an ecosystem. That was it for now. I hope you enjoyed this little lecture. I really wanted to keep it short, but there's so much more to this. So if I was cutting some corners myself, that is because of the topic. It is way more, there's way more steps to it than you think. But these three little things I really, really want you to start doing. So start observing. Um, Whatever you do, always think of the whole as an ecosystem. And there was another one, always plant more diversity. So not only one flower, but multiple flowers of that same species, for example. So sunflowers, not only the red one, but also the yellow and the orange. Strawberries, not only Ostara strawberries, but also different varieties of strawberries. Apple trees, not only one apple tree, but plant two and plant more variety of apple trees, so that we restore a little bit of balance in our gardens. If you want to know more about me and my work and how I do these things for landscapes, feel free to contact me. I always provide free audits for landscapes that are 3 acres and up. We hop on a call on Zoom, and I really want to connect with you and your project, and I really want to help you to restore more balance. Whatever you're tackling right now, it doesn't really matter to me, but as long as I can work on soil restoration, because that is the heart of the work that I do. It always starts with soil balance, as you might have heard in this little lecture. Just contact me. Feel free to DM me. Follow me on Instagram. Share this little training with whomever you think is beneficial. And I really hope to connect with you. Thank you so much for listening in.